Hello and welcome to Miniature Adventures. I'm Big Lee, and this week I want to talk about 3 products which changed the way I painted for good. So before I get onto the topic, a little bit of an update as to why I'm filming like this as opposed to my normal position. Basically my room is full of stuff at the moment, post-Christmas chaos. We've still got tree and decorations, they're coming down hopefully today. But all the grandson's toys, because he spends a lot of time around with us. We're going to do a lot more babysitting in the new year as my daughter goes back to work. We've got piles of toys around here, and a lot of them are currently here and on my desk, on my games table / desk. So I haven't got room to swing a cat, let alone set up my camera equipment. Hence this position, just for today. It's a one-off, hopefully, but also because I'm going to wing it today because I just haven't even had time to write proper script. So here we go. So the topic for today is products that change the way that I paint. Now, if any of you have followed my videos before, you'll know that I've been painting a long time. I got into D&D and tabletop miniatures games of one kind or another in my early teens, so it's been well over 40 years that I've been putting paint on models. My early efforts were not fantastic, enamels on basic models with no preparation, training or guide of any kind. I was impressed with them at the time, but looking back they were awful, and I wish I still had those models. I don't know what happened to them. But within a year or two, it was like the group that I was with, we started playing buying models from lots of different companies, and of course we encountered Games Workshop, started playing some of their games, and inevitably bought White Dwarf magazine with its painting articles, and those led us to a particular way of painting, so using acrylics, block colours, black lining to highlight the changes between different sections of the model, dry brushing to bring out the highlights. Later on we introduced some use of washes and so on, but that was how I painted for a long time, and produced perfectly good quality models for D&D gaming, for instance. But I think one of the first products that really changed the way I paint, and by that I mean has become a permanent part of my painting style, the way that I paint. And I'm not for a second suggesting that I have got a brilliant painting style. I'm happy with it. Produces what I consider to be good quality miniatures for wargaming with. They're not going to win any competitions, but I'm happy with the results. I'm always, really chuffed with when I finish a unit and go look at it and go, look, cool, I've done that. But it's, like I say, I'm not for a moment suggesting that my painting method is better than any other. It's just the way that I do it. But the one product that really sort of made a difference was the use of inks. Now, I'm particularly thinking of shades. So we're going to talk about things like the Army Painter or other brands of Quick Shade, but also calligraphy ink. This is Winsor & Newton Peat Brown calligraphy ink, fantastic. This is brilliant on 6mm models. I dilute it 3 to 1, so 3 parts ink, 1 part water, and the peat brown works really nice. It's not too it doesn't darken the model too much, sinks into the recesses on 6mm figures, fantastic. So I think it's a great way of painting 6mm figures. So I block paint everything, ink, job done. For larger models I do like using things like Quick Shade or other similar products to produce that instant shading effect. And so I stopped black lining. So for those of you that don't know what that is, way back, the way I learned to paint was you would block paint sections of a model, perhaps the jacket and then the coat over the top or whatever, and you would put a black line between those sections to show that little bit of shade, demarcate the difference between one piece of clothing and another, or one piece of equipment and another. And as you can imagine, that required an extremely steady hand, which I've never really had and isn't getting any better as I get older. Ink does that instantly, and it adds a little bit of graduation as well. So a really good ink or a wash like this does that shading, that instant cover of the model and puts in a little bit of shade in the recesses and so on instantly. And for wargaming models, for the figures that I want down on the table, I think it works fantastic, and it's become a staple part of my painting repertoire, and has been for, I don't know, I've been using inks of one kind or another for over 20 years now. And I'm not particularly tied to one particular brand, but I do think that washes of one kind or another, another one that I use on occasion, somewhere in here, Agrax Earth Shade, Games Workshop product, can't find it now, but it's in here somewhere. Oh yeah, Agrax Earth Shade. That's a nice one, but like I say, I quite like the quick shade products. Inks or washes for shading purposes have become a staple. Now obviously there's a different type of inks out there now. Contrast paints, obviously, I consider them to be a type of ink wash. They've got their place, but I don't think they're ever going to be a permanent part of my standard painting style. I use them on occasion. There are certain models where I think that's going to work better than my normal painting style, but you can't really use quick shades on 6mm models, for instance. So regardless of what scale I'm painting, an ink shade like the calligraphy ink or the quick shade, it works perfectly for the way I want to paint, and that's why I would say it changed the way I painted, because up till that point I was still doing black lining and manually putting in the shading as opposed to using inks. And as I'm not entering any competitions anymore, they produce perfectly good results. And in fact, I really like, I'm doing, and any of you who have followed me on recently will know that me and my mate Ray are doing the retreat from Moscow, and I really like that slightly grubby look that a dark ink shade can produce. So I've actually made a blend up here of different different types of shades. So I've got the strong tone and the dark tone. I made up a big bottle of the stuff. It's just right for what I want. It produces nice shadows on the 28mm models that I'm painting, but also gives them a slightly grubby, campaigny type look. These are men in the field, they're dirty, so their clothes look dirty, their faces look dirty, and so on. I think that I actually really like that look on wargaming models. There's nothing wrong with having nice, crisp, beautifully painted and beautifully shaded models on a games table. I love them as much as anyone else, but that's not my style of painting, and I think there's an argument there to have dirty looking models, especially for soldiers in the field. Inks are is the first product that I wanted to say that has changed the way that I paint forever. So the next product, and it is going to be medium thinner. Now this is Vallejo's medium thinner. I have got a bigger bottle somewhere. I use it all the time now. Once upon a time it was standard for me to use water to dilute paint down, to make it slightly more runnier, so that I could use it for different types of purposes. So you just needed to perhaps paint that was perhaps drying a little bit, you put a bit more water in it, you thin it down a little bit. But the medium thinner works brilliantly because it thins the paint without diluting the pigment, and it holds the pigment really well. This is specifically designed by Vallejo for their game colour range, a model colour range as well. But obviously there are going to be other medium thinners out there, and I urge you to give them a try if you don't already. I now never dilute paint with water. Once upon a time I even went to the effort of buying distilled water to make sure there was no impurities in the water, like it made a difference for my quality of painting. But actually medium thinner was a game changer. It was a gear shift in the way that I diluted paints, and it made a huge difference. I don't know how long ago I started buying this, 10-15 years ago. I've never looked back. I've used it all the time now, and like I say, I never dilute paints with water anymore. So there you go. That's my second product that has become a permanent fixture in my painting palette, for want of a better phrase, in the way that I paint, and I use this thinner, or again, regardless of what scale model I'm painting or what style of model I'm painting, I use that to thin paints rather than water now. Now for the third product, I imagine some people are going to be thinking maybe something like contrast paints or some other newfangled development, and they're great, and I do use them a bit, but they're not supplanting a previous product and become a permanent fixture. What has though is Winsor & Newton Galleria's matte varnish brush on. Now when I started the channel, so we're going back 3 or 4 years now, I did a video about varnishing, and I advocated 4 coats of varnish, and I used spray varnish. Again, Winsor & Newton varnish, but I would put 2 coats of gloss varnish on and 2 coats of matte varnish on. Sometimes I would forego the 2 coats of matte varnish, spray varnish, and use Testa's dull coat, which again is a fantastic product, but has been increasingly hard to get in the UK, because obviously it's made in the, I believe it's made in the US. Certainly it's imported, and it's very expensive, and I've found it increasingly difficult to find a supplier. Whereas this is very easy. I can get it in any art shop, and it's, I would say, arguably as good as Testa's dull coat. Gives a perfectly flat finish to your models. And now that has become a permanent fixture in regardless of what scale that I'm painting. I still use a spray gloss varnish to seal the model and protect the paint job before going over it with a brush with this stuff, because I don't want to damage the paint that I've put on, potentially any delicate surfaces, particularly when I might have used an ink, and I don't want to accidentally slightly dilute it and dissolve an ink that I've put on. So I will spray varnish the model very lightly with a gloss coat to seal it, because the gloss coat will dry harder. That's what I've found. So you get a nice protective surface, and then you can go over it with this. And now this stuff, you can slap it on thick, and it doesn't matter if it pulls and it goes all cloudy. Give it a day or 2 and it will go clear. I mean, obviously if you put it on in a nice thin coat, it'll go clear relatively quickly. But you know, you can't go wrong with this stuff. I have overdone it with some models and ended up with way too much varnish on there. I thought, oh bugger, I've ruined it. But then after a day or 2 it dries clear. It shrinks down as it dries, and it does a really good job protecting the model, and as I say, extremely flat, so very, very good. So this has become a permanent fixture regardless of what scale I'm painting. So there you have it, my personal 3 products that I would say have completely changed my painting style and have become a permanent fixture of how I paint regardless of what scale I'm painting. So that begs the question, what would you say would be your 3 top products that have changed the way you paint from when you first started? Or did you adopt a style back then and have stuck to it rigidly and never changed anything, never bought a different product or tried something new? I'd be obviously more interested in hearing, have you got a favourite product, something that you never used when you first started painting, but now you couldn't live without and has become a staple part of how you paint miniatures? So as always, I would love to hear your experiences in the comments below. So time for a hobby update, and obviously anyone who's been following the channel and my blog, or indeed anyone who's taken part in the Analog Hobbies Painting Challenge will know that progress is ongoing with my my half of the Retreat from Moscow project that I'm doing with Ray. So 1812 I'm doing the Russians. I managed to do a couple of Grenadier unit, a musket unit, and some Jaeger skirmishers. I'm working on some more musketeers and some officers, and I've got some artillery lined up, primed and ready to go. So I'm quite happy with my progress. I'm well ahead of where I thought I would be. I've had a lot of time over the Christmas period to get some painting done. The wife's been very forgiving, giving me plenty of time to get on with that. Things might slow down a bit because I'm back to work properly next week, but you know, I suppose I'm not alone in that. But yeah, I spent a lot of time over Christmas getting a lot of painting done. thoroughly enjoying the project, and I'm really chuffed with how things are turning out. The snow that we've been using, a lot of people have commented on that, by the way. I should say the snow is really simple. Now if I can find it, it is Woodland Scenics snow and PVA glue. That's all it is. And I made a pot up, put some snow stuff in, squirt some PVA on it, mix it up until it's a slightly runny paste. Don't want it too dry, because you need enough glue in there that when you put it on the base it's going to adhere, and it will set nice and hard. But you don't want it too runny either, because otherwise you've got more glue than snow. So a slightly runny paste, and then I put it on with a spatula. I use a metal spatula, old metal tool. I mean, you can use anything really, and I can just dab it onto the base, and then once it's stuck to the base, just manipulate it. I want a nice sort of rumpled, stepped on, messed about snow look, because it's going to be trampled by soldiers. So you can equally, I've done another model recently, I'll show you a picture, a Christmas model where I did a nice smooth surface, untouched snow, because I wanted a slightly more ethereal look for that particular fantasy model. But for me historical stuff, me Retreat from Moscow, I want a more trampled look. So making up this, like I say, Woodland Scenics and PVA, I made a small pot up. When it's finished or it goes off, I can just clear it out and make a new batch up. I've had a batch on the go and in a pot for several weeks, and it doesn't appear to be going off in any way, so it's working quite well. As long as that pot is sealed, it's lasting for weeks. I don't have to make up a batch of snow every time I'm doing the models, and so I'm really chuffed with that, how that's come out. And a lot of people, like I say, have commented on the snow effect. It isn't purely my idea. Me and Ray were talking about different snow products. We tried out loads of different types, and this was how we eventually, I think Ray tried something out. He made a slightly sloppier version. I've tried similar technique, same two products, but made mine slightly drier. Whatever works for you. But the point is we sort of found a method that we quite like and is producing the results that we want. So that's it for this week. Not much else, because I'll say I'm not very prepared. I've got a cold. I've had another bout of the recurring illness from before Christmas. Thankfully, it hasn't knocked too much time out away from the painting table. So I'm going to crack on in the coming week, and I'll say I'm back to work next week, trying to get on with as much as I can. And obviously I'll see you next Sunday. Happy New Year to everyone. I hope you had a wonderful Christmas and Santa brought you all the toys that you wanted. I got a load of metal delivered, so I'm well happy. But yeah, Happy New Year to everyone, and hope you stay with us for 2025. And we'll see what topics come up. And as always, I'll put a call out to you. If you've got a topic or a subject you'd like me to talk about, or I want to ask a question that maybe I can turn into one of these Sunday topics, please do put it in the comments below, because I'm always on the idea of looking out for ideas. And I like answering subscribers' questions. It gives me something to have a think about, and then I get a topic and a video out of it. So that's it for this week. As always, hope you enjoyed the video, and if you did, please like, subscribe and share, and of course click the bell notification icon if you want to keep up to date with weekly content from the channel. So that's it. Look after yourself, keep gaming, and of course keep rolling high.